Peace and greetings, YouTube. This is Rastimotheos, High Priest of the Temple Divine. I wanted to speak today about the ego. We hear about the ego all the time, but most people don't really know what it is. And then I'm going to give a little bit of artistry to symbolize it so we can better understand it. So I'm going to be working on this book again. So, identifying the ego. At the root of our existence, there's a spark, and this spark comes from the animating life force of the cosmos. And our egos are the shell that encodes itself around the divine spark, which allows human beings to interact with and create relationships to the spark and what we call the environment. So basically, what we have here is so we have the divine spark, and this comes from the Creator. This is the essence of the Creator within us. And then we have this shell around the divine spark. So this shell is the ego, and this point, this dot, is the divine spark. Now, this is just a diagram. This is not how it actually is, but as you can see, the ego is the outer shell, so that's how you can better understand that aspect. So it says this allows the divine spark and its shell allows human beings to interact with and create relationships to the spark and that which we call the environment. So the environment, which would be, for example, anything out here in these realms. This is our environment, and this environment is based on this spark and its awareness, consciousness. So the ego in and of itself pertains to the little senses. These are sense organs that allows information to pass between the environment and all the way to the divine spark, which allows the divine spark to then interact with the outer environment, which we call behavior. So identifying the ego is primarily a function of the conscious mind and the senses. The ego defined means the I, or the self of any person. It is the thinking, feeling, and consciously being able to distinguish itself from other selves. Okay? The self is the rational component of the psyche that experiences and reacts to the outer world and mediates between the demands of the identification of self and self's importance. So, what is determined by self is defined by this interaction between the ego and the divine spark. That is generally what defines self. Now, in order for example, for me to say I am Rastimotheos, there has to be something that initiates this I am. So the I am within us is initiated by the divine spark. So the divine spark gives us the ability to say I am. Now, whatever else comes after that is the involvement of the ego. So this is our identification, right? Who are you? I am, and then your name, right? Or whoever you think you are. And it's defined by the ego. Well, when you were born, your environment, right? When you were born into this world, when this soul comes into this environment, into this world, into this reality, our reality that we know of, we don't recognize ourselves as a divine spark, right? We recognize ourselves as the ego, as who we think we are according to our environment, right? Not according to in here, because when we're born into this world, we see the world as separate, right? We see the world separate. Everything is separate. I am, as far as my identification, is different from who you are according to the ego. But according to the divine spark, everything is interconnected. The environment, the ego, and the self. But the self, the divine spark, is not even of this whole environment. It's not of this world. This is the world we live in. And our divine spark is not of this world. We're born into this world, but we're not of it. We're born into this world as this, but we're not of it. This I am comes from the divine spark, or comes from the God, the creator, however you want to look at it. This self, comes from the creator, but we perceive it as individually I am, separate. We view ourselves as separate. So the consciousness of our own identity forms what we know as the ego. It is the awareness of the self in the situation or event. It is the outer persona. So our real self is based on the anima, or the animating principle within us. And our persona is what we define as the ego. So the ego is connected to the roles which we choose to play in life or in this environment. The actorial stereotypes which we play in life, like a stage of actors identifying with the costumes and performance of that identity or individual character. The ego is the current version of our personal identity. This begins early in life when society gives us a name and assigns to us the basis of a character or an identity that we fill as a role of our animating principle to play within this world. The world as we normally see it is our ego, or our perception of this world. It is the conscious mind assigning information to the senses, to things of this world, and to files in the brain